Sherlock Holmes is the protagonist of 56 short stories and 4 novels written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He is the symbol of crime fiction and certainly one of the most famous and loved fictional characters in the world. Crime novel is a popular literary genre, started in the 19th century. The main subject of this literary genre consists of the description of a crime and the characters involved in that crime, both criminals and victims. Edgar Allan Poe and Conan Doyle are considered the creators of crime fiction. Conan Doyle was born in Edinburgh in 1859 and received a Catholic education, from which he disassociated himself during the academic studies. Doyle completed his education in medical school and opened a medical study with no success. In that moment of his life, Doyle started writing The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which had a decent success in England. The brilliant investigator appears for the first time in A Study in Scarlet, published in the Strand magazine in 1887. The narrator of the story is Holmes' companion, John Watson, a doctor who presents the very same author and his knowledge of science and passion for deduction. In 1890, the sequel, The Sign of the Four, was published with major success. Over the years, various adaptations of the charismatic detective adventures have been made. One of these is Sherlock Holmes by Guy Ritchie, 2009, performed by Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock and Jude Law as Dr. Watson. Protagonists' personalities are completely different. Robert Downey gives a touch of charisma, insolence, rudeness, and annoyance to his character, unlike the Sherlock Holmes in the books, who appears a calm, schemer, and refined person. It is very interesting when Holmes mentally anticipates his battle moves before putting them into practice.
You won, congratulations.
Oi, we ain't done yet.
This mustn't register on an emotional level. First, distract target. Then block his blind jab. Counter with cross to left cheek. Discombobulate. Dazed, will attempt wild haymaker. Employ elbow block. And body shot. Block feral left. Weaken right jaw. Now fracture. Break cracked ribs. Traumatize solar plexus. Dislocate jaw entirely. Heel kick to diaphragm. In summary, ears ringing, jaw fractured, 3 ribs cracked, 4 broken, diaphragm hemorrhaging. Physical recovery 6 weeks. Full psychological recovery 6 months. Capacity to spit it back of head neutralized.
On the contrary, in the books, Sherlock never fights. Watson diverges from the original too. In the stories, he seems less dynamic, clumsy, shy, discreet, completely different from the haughty doctor in the film. The film begins with the 2 protagonists intent preventing the ritual murder of a woman. Sherlock and Watson are already a close-knit duo. The production's atmosphere is dark and entangling in a dirty and improper London, where Sherlock is the most famous investigator in Great Britain. They discovered that Lord Blackwood has killed 5 other young women similarly, has committed the ritual murder. Blackwood is sentenced to death and requests to meet Holmes, to whom he reveals that there will be 3 more unstoppable deaths that will cause great consequences to the world. Blackwood is subsequently hanged and pronounced dead by Watson. In the meantime, Holmes meets Irene Adler, a professional thief, and his former lover. She asks Sherlock to investigate Blackwood. The following day, Blackwood's tomb is found destroyed from the inside out, and sightings of the dead man, which has left a gravedigger in shock, causes public panic. Holmes and Watson start their investigation. A few days later, Blackwood lures Holmes to a warehouse where he finds Irene, chained to a hook, gagged and heading towards a bent saw, though he saves her in time. Watson is injured in a series of explosions set up by Blackwood.
Holmes!
And Holmes finds out there is an arrest warrant for him. Holmes goes into hiding and studies Blackwood's rituals, concluding that the next target is the Parliament and its members. Sherlock, Irene, and Watson discover a machine below the Palace of Westminster designed to release cyanide gas into the Parliament chambers, killing everyone but Blackwood and his supporters. As Holmes and Watson battle Blackwood's men, Irene removes the cyanide containers from the machine and flees, pursued by Holmes. Blackwood realizes his plan has failed. Holmes confronts Irene on top of the incomplete Tower Bridge, but is interrupted by Blackwood. As Holmes and Blackwood fight, Holmes tricks him into becoming entangled in the ropes and chains hanging over the Thames, while he explains the technical trickery behind Blackwood's supposed magic. After a fight, Blackwood, with a noose of chains around his neck, falls from the bridge and is hanged, this time properly. Irene explains that her employer is Professor Moriarty, warning that he is as intelligent as Holmes, but far more devious. Moriarty used the confrontations with Adler and Blackwood as a diversion while he took a key component from the machine. Holmes looks forward to the new case and the investigation continues. The differences between the book characters and the film characters are significant. In the film, Sherlock is light-hearted, a modern hero. The protagonist, described by Conan Doyle, is instead cold, tied to the scientific method, egocentric and characterized by lack of empathy. The amusement during the reading is given by the narration of Dr. Watson. Both in the narration of the events and in the description of the unperturbed Sherlock, he adds his sensibility to the cold logic of science. In the film, the relationship between them is almost equal. Even if Holmes remains the undisputed genius, he knows he needs Watson by his side. He is jealous of his future wife and is worried to lose him. In the book, Sherlock feels superior to Watson and looks down on him with sarcasm, sometimes almost cynicism. If it weren't for Watson, that understands and describes the detective's complex personality, Sherlock would not be pleasant to anyone. An interesting curiosity is that the phrase "elementary, my dear Watson" is never uttered by Holmes in the 60 stories read by Conan Doyle. He often observes that his conclusions are elementary and occasionally calls Watson "my dear Watson." One of the nearest approximations of the phrase appears in The Adventure of the Crooked Man, when Holmes explains a deduction. "Excellent," I cried. "Elementary," said he.